All right, today we are diving into this really fascinating fable, and it uses, of all things, ancient dragons to explore a super modern question. How in the world do we find inner peace?
I mean, it sounds kind of like a paradox, doesn't it? But that's the central question of this whole story. We're going to dig into a text that makes a pretty wild claim that the secret to enlightenment wasn't first discovered by us humans, but by dragons. Dragons who had to overcome their own really destructive nature. So, okay, to really get a handle on their transformation, we've got to first understand the world they came from. And believe me, it was a world built on nothing but anger and conflict.
The story kicks off, apparently, in the British Isles, and it paints this picture of a time when dragons were, well, to put it mildly, they were not very nice folks. They were just plain mean. And according to the source material, they'd completely lost their way from a much kinder, more caring past.
And this world was just bleak. The source tells us these dragons loved to bicker and quarrel. War was literally their idea of a good time. Can you imagine? They'd hoard these giant piles of jewels they couldn't even use, just filled with a greed that left them feeling totally empty. The text describes them as ghosts where nothing could fill them up.
Wow. And this right here, this slide really frames the central conflict of the whole story. It's a battle between two totally different ways of being, right? You've got the external world of hoarding and fighting on one side versus the internal world of finding that jewel inside on the other. But, into all this darkness, a new kind of dragon was born. And this one, well, he just couldn't get his head around the anger that drove his entire tribe. His name was Zoran, and yeah, he was a total misfit. All he wanted to do was have some fun, be kind. And while he was out flying one day, he has this realization. His true nature wasn't about fighting, it was about freedom. And, as you can probably guess, that did not go over well with the elders. So get this. This was his defiant answer to his own father, who was absolutely furious that Zoran didn't care about the family's giant pile of jewels. The source says this statement was like placing gasoline on the fire. Whoops, yeah, that pretty much sealed this fate right there. And things escalated fast. The elders thought Zoran was wreaking havoc just because other young dragons were starting to admire his peaceful vibe. And then, when Zoran started meditating, discovering what the text calls the infinite ocean within, well, that was the final straw. The council banished him. But he didn't leave alone. A few other young dragons actually followed him into exile in secret. So, this journey into exile, it pretty quickly turned into a profound journey inward. Okay, so after a 3-month trip flying only at night to stay hidden, they find this remote cave way up in the mountains of Tibet. And that's where the real hard work began. The source makes this point that conquering your own mind is the most difficult thing in the entire universe. And these young dragons, they were about to find that out firsthand. And this was the immediate problem they ran into. When they first tried to meditate, they realized it was even harder than learning to fly. Their minds were just this constant storm of noise. I mean, does that sound familiar to anyone? Yeah, that internal chaos actually has a name. It's called the monkey mind. It's that restless part of us that just can't sit still, constantly jumping from one thought to the next. And that is what the dragons had to learn to tame. And this next part, this parable, brilliantly illustrates the solution they figured out. So there's this guy, right? He's being tormented by a genie who's always demanding wishes. A wise man tells him, look, just give the genie a simple, repetitive task. Make him climb up and down a log. The dragons learned their mind was the genie, and their breath was the log. It was a constant point of focus to keep that monkey mind busy and finally find some stillness. This second story really drives the point home. There's a master thief, and he spends days trying to steal a precious gem. He searches everywhere, turns the whole place upside down, only to find out the jeweler hid it in the one place the thief never bothered to look, under his own pillow. The lesson is pretty clear, right? What we're searching for so desperately out there in the world is often already right here, inside of us. So, after hundreds of years of meditation, the dragons finally reach this ultimate realization. It's huge. They didn't just find something in the universe. They discovered that they were the universe, just walking around in dragon bodies. Now, according to the fable, this incredible discovery wasn't kept secret. Nope, it was passed down through generations, from dragons to us to humanity. So the fable lays out this direct lineage of wisdom. It all starts when some village kids stumble upon these meditating dragons. Then the source makes this claim that hundreds of years later, huge figures like a young Confucius and Lao Tzu actually studied with them. It even suggests that Christ visited their hidden city, Shambhala, to study during his so-called lost years. And the source says that this one simple, powerful idea, the Golden Rule, was the foundation of everything Confucius taught. It became the cornerstone of this peaceful civilization that grew in Shambhala, a place where dragons and humans apparently lived together in harmony. Okay, so why does any of this matter to us, right now, today? Well, the source uses this fable to draw some really direct and pretty thought-provoking parallels to our own modern world. And the text presents this really stark contrast. You see on one side, in Shambhala, the Golden Rule led to harmony, to welcoming refugees. The source then contrasts that with what it describes as the modern world's reality: division, mockery, building walls, and a for-profit prison system that doesn't really encourage second chances.
And this is really the core takeaway the author is offering here. The whole argument is that we've somehow mistaken kindness for weakness, when it's actually the most powerful force for change there is. That the only way to overcome all the darkness, the war, the anger, the greed, is with the light of our true kind nature.
You know, this ancient spiritual idea of unity, this idea that we're all connected, it can be boiled down to this one single number. And it's an idea that's even echoed in modern physics by Erwin Schrödinger. He's the one who proposed that despite all our individual appearances, the total number of minds in the entire universe is simply one. And so we come full circle, back to the most important line in this whole story, the secret that was whispered from ancient dragons. It's a final, really powerful thought to just sit with for a minute. What if the universe isn't just out there, but it's also right here, inside you?